All right, so welcome to the tape group, the World Work tape group, where we use the government of Eden. I always show the book to prove this is the book. We use it, chapter 7. Chapter 7 is when we indulge in condemnation, which is something that we don't do anymore. We're not going to indulge in condemnation, but Joel writes a chapter about it, and the great thing is that it is a great inspiration. So it's not about condemning better or still enjoying that, but see what happens if you are not doing that any longer, and seeing that you become the center of love when you do so. So it is like that's something that you become by not doing it anymore. So you don't have to make yourself a center of love. That's already what you are. But stop condemnation, stop comparing, stop believing what you see is a fact. And this is just the thing that's occurring. So that is quite something, and that's a beautiful inspiration that we use today in this meeting. And we made a video with a meditation, and I'm going to look at some Romans from the Aramaic Bible, Romans 8. That always sounds so familiar. Romans 8, I think it is Romans 8. But we'll come to that later. So now the most important part is to welcome you here in this tape group today. Thank you so much for your presence, for that you decided to come and listen and be part of it, because in fact here's where communication is. And when I say here, I don't mean that what comes out of my mouth, but in the recognition of each other with a single purpose that happens. Like you could say, like minds communicate. This one consciousness is communicating. And when you let go of your individual ideas of separation, attack, and condemnation, you actually discover that we're communicating perfectly. And that's a great surprise. It seems like totally impossible if you had to do it by yourself. If you had to come up with a proposal, so to speak, how to come into communication with your Creator, you wouldn't know where to look for it. So here, that is all taken care of. It is happening. So it doesn't need your ideas about it. And that is so beautiful. So leaving those ideas out of it, suddenly you recognize that you are communicating. But if I try to do something, then it fails, and then it seems to be totally impossible. Otherwise, you would have found a way to communicate. You would found a way to communicate with your source, and you didn't. You didn't find that. It came to you by you not knowing any longer. So it's like in a place where communication with God is impossible, like this world. It is impossible to communicate in this world. You can go to a church and pray your heart out, but is that really praying? So this is all new discovery. Of course, not totally new, but it is something that we admit to ourselves, in fact, by saying it is totally impossible to do that. I cannot do that. So the communication takes place if I give up all my ideas about it. Then suddenly I find myself in a bright light communication with my Creator. Now, you can come to that in different ways, and it happens to you in your exact way, and that's the beauty of it too. And in the end, it doesn't really matter how it comes to you, but the fact that it will come to you is just in fact your certainty, because if you were created whole and perfect and in total communication with your Creator, why isn't that now the case? That would be an insane idea that you would think about yourself, as if you have to look for communication with God. Well, He's the one that created you as His most beloved Son. So that sounds all very logic. Now, in this world work series, you could say like the world work that we do is in fact a relinquishment of any world attachment, because this world seems to be the total opposite of our communion with God, a place of pain, sickness, death, war, you name it. It is very easy for me to give some examples of that. I always refer to your news app or any kind of any kind of development that appears to be happening in this world is like 100% related to limitation, to sickness, pain, and death temporarily manifested. So it's like it's always time related. In other words, it's always time related. It's always not forever. It is always limited. So our world work is really like the discovery that none of this is what the wholeness and perfection of God is. And that's why relinquishment is necessary to go through a phase of purification, as Joel says it too. Mary Baker used it too in her books. Like there's a purification going on. There's a relinquishment of all the ideas that you held about this world. So the world work, and that's one other way to say that, is also an forgiveness project, because you will have to forgive yourself of what you think you see and what you think was necessary to give value to. Because this world is there because you value it. And this is the part that's probably the most unpopular part. It's like that you actually have to look at what you're doing. Why is there pain, sickness, and death? Why is that? Because apparently I am giving it value. Otherwise I would not be seeing it. And what does it do? What does it do when I give it value? What does that profit me, you could say? What is the benefit for me in doing that? Well, the benefit for me is then in having an idea about myself, having a self-identity that, even though it isn't pretty, it is at least something that is mine. And you do your best, in fact, to protect that. You say like, no, I don't protect it. It's like, well, look around. Is there in your world sickness, pain, and death? Do you see, do you experience pain and sickness yourself? Or any of those related ideas? And you probably say yes. Like, well, then it cannot be that you are not giving it value. You will have to do that. Otherwise it would not be there. So this asks for a deep sense of relinquishment, a deep sense of leaving my ideas about myself, giving up who I think I am, letting that go. Even though I think I'm such a great character or such a charming whatever. It's like, no, for a moment, at least for a moment, we give that up to have a different experience, because you're not here because the world is so incredible and you have the time of your life and you think everything is so fine and perfect and you have even a better life than your neighbor. That's not why you are here. When we indulge in condemnation and even in, say, validating or enjoying differences, that's not looking good in that sense. So here we are in this spiritual path. In fact, we come back to this all the time because we were stuck in the pain. We were stuck in seeing our neighbor die, or seeing our loved ones die, or seeing that sickness is rampant where you find yourself. So there must be an alternative. This cannot be what God created. And in that point you were absolutely right. So this is why you are here. This is why you found me, you could say, and why you found Joel. Just because of that. Like you cannot stand this insanity of limitation and of sickness, pain and death and of mistrust and attack and murder and all the things of this world. So here is our world work. It is completely individual. So we don't do this as a group really. Like we have a tape group and we listen to tapes together. But this is an individual process of relinquishment, because recognizing that when what we think we are, if that is relinquished, then we recognize that our brother is the one that we have been waiting for to recognize. We see in him the Christ and nothing else. It's like a bright shining light that is not asking for anything than being totally recognized as the love that we know ourselves to be. Now that is world work. So so I love that. I love it when that is clear, when that comes to you, like it does come to us. So Joel is in fact now leading us into a meditation. And this meditation is becoming the center of love. And we used it yesterday too, in the first day of the way of gratitude. And here we are again. We use this because it's such a great inspiration and so quieting and comforting, and that it's very useful to listen to many times. So that's what I'm going to share with you right now. Becoming a center of love. In my heart, at this instant, I release every individual from criticism, judgment, and condemnation. I pray that no man be punished for any sin, but rather he be forgiven, that his eyes be opened to the Christ light. In this moment of spiritual communion, I have no envy in my heart. I have no desires in my heart, no jealousy, no greed, no lust, no animality. I set this world free. There is nothing it has that I want. Since I and the Father are one, I receive my good by the grace of God, and whatever good should flow into me and out from me, I freely give to all, to every neighbor, friend or foe.
Devenir un centre d'amour. Dans mon cœur, à cet instant, je libère chaque individu de la critique, du jugement et de la condamnation. Je prie pour qu'aucun homme ne soit puni pour aucun péché, mais plutôt qu'il soit pardonné, que ses yeux s'ouvrent à la lumière du Christ. En ce moment de communion spirituelle, je n'ai aucune envie dans mon cœur. Je n'ai aucun désir dans mon cœur. Aucune jalousie. Aucune cupidité. Aucune convoitise. Aucune animalité. Je libère ce monde, il n'y a rien qu'il y ait que je désire, puisque moi et le Père sommes un. Je reçois mon bien par la grâce de Dieu. Et tout bien qui coule en moi et qui sort de moi, je le donne librement à tous, à chaque voisin, ami ou ennemi.
All right. Thank you so much for joining in this moment. So it's a real contemplation, in fact, that Joel is giving us here. So I love that. And yeah, in this quiet we actually are able to meet. So it is like the quiet is one thing, and the next thing, in fact, is then feeling that, experiencing it, allowing yourself to sink into that stillness and to feel whatever comes up, to feel this connection, and yeah, more and more not being afraid to deeply go into that, to discover more of that. So you could say, like I was talking about relinquishment. So what is this relinquishment then? It's like, how do you do that? Well, it is like, in fact, you don't respond to the things, just like we saw last week too. It's like you don't respond to things as you are used to, but you take time. You take a moment. You breathe first, or you receive what is being said first before you respond. So it's all like a slowing down of the human response to everything, because as a human being you perceive something and you have a plan ready for action. So this is like, yeah, you know how to respond to it just because of your experience. But then you forget that the experience that you had yesterday has no value in realizing the Christ light within you. So it has no relationship with yesterday. So all the things you have learned and kept with you as almost like a shield to protect yourself in case of worst case scenarios or whatever comes your way, this protection shield needs to go. Just like we said last week, putting up your sword, now it's also time to put down the shield. There's nothing that needs protection here. There's no one that needs protection here, because you're not what you think you are, and this world is not what you think it is. And this is the pure world work that we're doing, putting up the sword and putting down the shield. There's nothing to defend against. To who would you defend yourself? To yourself? No. Are you and your brother one? Yes. Is there only one of us? Yeah. Is there only one consciousness? Yes. Is there something outside your consciousness that can attack you? No, there's not. No, there's not. So that's why you put down your shield. You don't have to defend. You don't have to indulge in condemnation or in protection or defense. So that's relinquishment, because you're completely identified with doing that. You think that what you are is in fact what you defend, what you protect, so that it not be taken away. And in fact, Joel is saying here, no, you put it down. You don't need that. That what you're protecting is not you. That what you are doesn't need protection. And this is so incredibly basic, but this is the lesson. It's too simple, and the lesson is too simple. Oh, you don't need to do that. Okay. And the next moment you step right into it, defending yourself or explaining yourself why you're doing something. Or, thinking that you know how things are supposed to look and trying to push that forward. Now this is relinquishment. You don't do that. You leave that. Just like you're not making any past real. That's what we call then forgiveness. You're not making any of the past real. You're not going to bring a situation in again that is already over to in fact make sure that the one who deserves the guilt is going to get it. No, you let that go. You release that. You relinquish. You allow that to be relinquished. So in other words, you come in touch with that in every step that you take in this world. Because this world is really like the manifestation of conflict, nothing else. In fact, it is made for it. It is made for you to be someone. You've made yourself into something, and now you're going to protect that. And everything that's coming in your way, you're going to deal with. You make a plan, you have your ideas about it, how that's supposed to look. And here's the message of the Master, of Jesus, saying like, no, leave that, let it go, release it, relinquish. What you are truly doesn't need protection. So this is also any kind of idea you can hold about your body, thinking that you're so and so old. Like literally, if you would biologically, even scientifically look at your body, there's nothing in your body older than probably 6-7 years. Like it's continuously renewing. So even that, like if you think you're 70 years old, or if you think you're 100 years old, what about you would be 100 years old? Like literally nothing is that. Everything is changing continuously, refreshing, renewing. It is just you with your idea about yourself making, in fact, that you grow old and get sick and die. That's what you do as a self-identity. That is your human path. The relinquishment of that is then bringing yourself back to this present moment, like we practice with Joel in the practicing the present. It's like on a continuing basis, you release your ideas about what happened yesterday. It's like we could even make the agreement not to mention each other's name anymore, because this name is rooted in time. You were born with that name. So it's like, well, there's nothing born with that name. That is you. Absolutely not. So let's not fool each other. So in that sense, we don't have to call each other your name. Because that can actually be helpful, not to do that anymore. It's like, okay, here you are. Well, I love you. Thank you. But, to bring it back to your birth certificate confirms to you that you are this, and you're not. This thing is 6 years old, maybe, and only by my ideas about myself, I would think I'm a grown-up, and I know how to deal with stuff, like this. So this is like relinquishment. Let go, let go, let go. So the result of that is a resurrecting you, a resurrecting body. Not something that is scarred by time, say, having the purpose of going to die. Like, no, you're not going to die. You are not going to die. That is impossible. There's nothing that can die. That is you. Nothing. That was also just an idea. Well, here's your relinquishment. Relinquish the idea that you can die. You can't. It's simply not possible. This is not the way that you were created. You can have all kinds of ideas and you can believe them and make them true to yourself and convince yourself that it's there. You can be very much afraid of it, but it's not going to happen. Now that is hardcore relinquishment, to give you an example. So great, awesome. Now Joel's writes, except for the center of love part that I used in the meditation, he shares some pieces. One is scripture, so I'm going to get that Romans 13, but 8 to 10. Okay, so that's from the Aramaic Plain English translation. Sometimes I love to use it because it's directly from Aramaic, which is the language that was spoken by Jesus and his disciples. So here we go. Romans 13. Owe no person anything but to love one another. For whoever loves his neighbor fulfills the written law. For this also that says, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not covet. Or if there is any other commandment, it is summed up in the saying, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Now that's the commandments as they are given in the Sermon on the Mount by Jesus. Love does not commit evil against its neighbor, because love is the fulfillment of the written law. Love is the fulfillment of the written law. And the written law is a law written in heaven, not anywhere else. Love is the fulfillment of the written law in heaven. So Joel continues. Love is the fulfilling of the law. That's what we just read. So do not try to get the law to operate in absence of love. And love means forgiveness. Love means forbearance. Having an infinite patience with your brother. Love means to be inwardly clean. Clean of hate, clean of jealousy, envy, malice, greed, all these negative minor qualities. Now this is great. So love means to be inwardly clean, clean of hate, jealousy, envy, malice, and greed. And then you say like, well, these are my favorite things as a human being. these are my favorite things. I love to condemn, I love to hate, and I love all of this. I'm jealous, and I'm possessive, and I want this and that. So that's the opposite of love. So you can say, like, as a human identity, this is what you actually really like. This is what you constantly do. You condemn. You are jealous. You miss something. You see that someone has it better than you. You compare and compete. You want to be the best. You don't want your neighbor to win. You don't want your neighbor to get everything and you are left empty-handed. And on and on and on. It's like you could say your whole human identity is based on these principles of greed, of lust, of murder, in fact. It is judgment. It is believing what you see is your reality. Your perception, you think that is what it is, and that it really happened and it is done to you. Now here we hear that love is in fact not any of that, that you need to clean yourself from that. Now how do you clean yourself from that? We were talking about relinquishment. Like, how do you clean yourself from that and still think that you're a human being? That would be totally impossible. That is obvious. So this is where, in fact, the spiritual path begins, by you discovering that as a human being, as you have configured yourself, as you have, say, educated yourself, made yourself, that needs to go. It's not working. It's not working. It's totally in the way of you being the love that you are. Because you have ideas, you have opinions, you in fact live by the idea of differences. And that's not possible. In love there are no differences. Love doesn't have an opinion. Love doesn't care about which one is going to be the president. Or love doesn't know about what country would have to win in what conflict. Like, love has nothing to do with that. So this is the immensity of, in fact, of the transformation that you're undergoing. It's not a little thing. So that's why it takes a bit of study here and a bit of world work to get through that, and seeing that you, for a moment, relinquish, allowing this change to occur, in which you, in fact, go on your knees and say, in order for me to become the center of love, I need to do this and this and this. In fact, I ask for a different experience than the one that I'm in, and want to know who I truly am instead of that what I think I am. So I want to come into the direct experience of who I am. Now this is where we are. It's like continuously, in fact, allowing ourselves to sink deeper, in fact, in a place in ourselves where that is a reality, where that is already given, where that is already true. And sometimes you come up to a fear, sometimes you come up to ideas, sometimes you meet a desire head on. And now what are you going to do? And so then the next step would be to let that go, instead of picking it up to perpetuate it further into the future. All right, so Joel talks about this too in the book. I love to read a little bit of that on page 131. So we're talking about this love means to be inwardly clean. This what I just summed up. Just right after that, Joel says, it may not be possible to go through an entire day of night without some of these negative emotions creeping in on us. Well, see, Joel has a very positive idea about you, and did you recognize that? It's like, well, notice it. Like, for a moment, notice it. How many times you fall into the trap of condemnation, or into the trap of comparing yourself, or having a judgment or an opinion about a situation. That is, okay, you check it out. You check it out yourself. It happens. That is why we became human beings. Instead of remaining in the Garden of Eden, we thought we knew what was good and bad. Suddenly we had it coming to us. It's like, yeah, now we know the difference. You're naked. I'm not naked. Yes, you are naked. Here, look at that. Oh yeah, I'm naked, for instance. So this is interesting, of course. So it goes further than that. Yeah. So suddenly we can see differences. Our eyes are opened to see differences. And that was purely the result of a temptation to know more than God, which is totally impossible since God is omniscient. But hey, anyway, we tried it, and we gave it our best, and we became human beings and protected ourselves from our nakedness, from our everything we did. So that's why we became human beings instead of remaining in the Garden of Eden. But we can purge ourselves twice or 3 times a day, or many, many times a day. So we look every man and woman in the face and say, I have released you into the realization of your God being. I know that you and the Father are one, and that all that the Father has is yours. But this is what I'm talking about. It's like now we're actually coming into the direct experience of that. Like, if I don't condemn my neighbor, but actually start to see him, whose eyes are opened, like my eyes are opened. My eyes are open to what is actually occurring. I'm actually seeing a real world suddenly. It is not what I thought it was. My brother's not who you think you are. Like this is this discovery that I have in my awakening. Suddenly I'm actually I'm allowing myself to feel my love for my brother totally, without definition of a relationship, without definition of any kind of limitation. No, directly, head on, into an experience of in fact, him as my savior. Now this is the practice. When you feel that, when you allow that to feel that, then you are that savior, as well with him. Like it is like in that relinquishment of your ideas about yourself, something shifts and takes place, and whambo, there's suddenly communication. There's suddenly a light of love that you share together. Now this is the experience we're talking about, where we're coming back to all the time, where we do all our practice for. So it's not just to mention it. It's like, I see you as the Christ in perfect and whole, and yes, what was it again? Like, no, this is about me allowing that to see in my brother, so I see that also in myself, because there is not two of us, but there is one of us. This is our practice, slowing down in that, being very patient with ourselves in feeling that, but also taking time to actually deeply feel that. So the purging that we're talking about is not just getting rid of things, but in fact opening ourselves up for a whole new experience in which there is communication, in which something really shifts and becomes light instead of going further in the same modus, but thinking that we have left something behind. It's like, that's not it. No, there is an palpable shift, a palpable change of frequency in your consciousness when this occurs. So it opens something up, in other words, not to make it too big or too difficult, but it's like something is opening up. Suddenly there's space. Suddenly you can breathe in that relationship. Suddenly you recognize, oh my God, what was I thinking? I cannot believe it. Now here you are. Now finally I can meet you. And that's for the liberation of me. It's like the only one that needs to be liberated is me. In my recognition, I set everyone free because I didn't see that before. And now I accept that for myself and for my brother at the same time. First in my brother, then in myself. And that, as I say, confirms our common source, that we come from the same Father, and that all that the Father has is mine, as well as my neighbor's too. That is loving my neighbor as myself. So this is very pure, very clear, very confrontative, because it can only happen when you set aside, you could say, or relinquish your ideas about yourself and about your neighbor. So yeah, this is what we do. And so Joel continues to inspire with the next talk that we're going to listen to. It is
without criticizing each other, without judging or criticizing or condemning each other's appearance. If we are sitting here loving the true nature of the individual out there, then you can bet healing is taking place, because the divine love that is flowing out from us is meeting the human need in this room. One time I was a first reader in a Christian Science church, and one Sunday morning, about just about 3 minutes before we were to go on the platform, all of a sudden a cold developed. It came out of the blue. There wasn't a sign of it before, and all of a sudden I had one of these horrible colds where you have to have handkerchiefs all around you. And the second reader looked at me and said, "Don't you think you better call a substitute?" I said, "Heavens, no, I'm the reader. I'm going out there." So we went out on the platform, me holding two handkerchiefs this way and holding one this way while I turned the pages of the book. Well, I could see the board of directors sitting over there. They were just laying for this service to be over. They were right for me. Okay? This went on for 50 minutes. And about the 51st moment, it disappeared just like it had come. No place. It was nowhere around. I just put my handkerchiefs in my pocket. I was as clear as a bell for the last 10 minutes. And the moment the service was over, everybody gasped. And I says, for heaven's sakes, what are you gasping about? There's 240 of you out there. Weren't you treating me? If I can't get healed with 240 Christian scientists sitting out here of a little code, what good is this truth? Well, I'll say it to you too. If there's one of us that is one with God and pouring out love and truth, not looking at a human and trying to see whether they're good, bad, or indifferent, but who cares whether it's the woman taken in adultery or the thief on the cross. If we're looking out here with divine love, only one of us, then every one of us should get healed. But oh, if there should be two or more out here, letting divine love flow out from them, every single one of us should get healed. And if by chance there should be 10 people in this city brave enough to acknowledge their infinity and let it flow out from them while they are forgiving the wrongdoer, can't you see that it has to save the city, the community, the nation? Whether it's your nation or my nation, who cares which nation it is? In the end, every nation, has to be saved. Every nation has to change its government from human to divine. Every government on earth. I had a letter today from a man high in the English government answering a letter of mine in which I said that the United Nations ought to be thrown in the bottom of the ocean for all of the purpose that it was serving. That there never will be an organization that will do this world any good until the organization is built on integrity and justice. Yeah, well, integrity and justice happen to be spiritual qualities, not human ones. Now, when that day comes that men meet, whether in this room, just we, or in that big United Nations building or some other similar one, when they meet with the idea of divine love, not coming to me to meet my human need, but flowing out from me to meet your human need. When we begin to meet that way, whether in this room or that room, I can assure you there are going to be healings. There are going to be healings, national and international, but not while each one of us is sitting around hoping that the other one is treating us so that we'll get well. But when we can forget our personal problem and say, the divine love that flows out from me, the infinite truth that flows out from me, even the little that I know, it might be as little as a couple of drops of oil, it may be as little as one Bible quotation. But let that little flow out of your consciousness in my direction and I'll be healed. And let it flow out of me in your direction and you'll be healed. And we'll all be healed because it'll be this kind of a flow. This kind of a flow. Divine love flowing back and forth from consciousness to consciousness. And then we're all healed. You see, healing, whether it's physical, mental, moral, financial, or human relationships, healing of any nature isn't something that man can do. It's something that man can become aware of. It's already established in him. Health is established in everybody. But, as we've seen, we can all escape it. We can all get away from it. We can all miss it by some human act of disobedience to the spiritual law. But we can all get back to very quickly the moment we remind ourselves that the kingdom of God is no further from me than my breathing. It's established within me. Now, instead of trying to get it, I've got to start to think out how to give it. And Don't think for a moment that during this present experience of mine, I still didn't have to take care of a practice all over the world. And I'm sure that that helped as much as anything else to put me back on my feet quickly. The fact that I didn't have time to think of myself, but I had to think of the thousands of people who are writing me, and at the moment expecting that I'm giving them a treatment, and then doing it. Now let's remember, in this work, you are starting from the standpoint that because of your oneness with God, you are infinite. Now, not that you separate and apart from God or anything, because separate and apart from God, you're like an electric bulb that's separate and apart from the electricity. But in your conscious awareness of your oneness with God, all that God is, you are. Son, thou art ever with me, and all that I have is thine. Very clear statement. And the Master makes one in the 15th chapter of John. If you abide in this word and let this word abide in you, you'll bear fruit richly. Do you see? It's what takes place in your consciousness. It isn't a God out here. It isn't a power out here. It isn't anything you pray to. It's an activity of truth in your consciousness. And that activity of truth must be an outflow, an outpouring of love, an outpouring of forgiveness, an outpouring of praying, an outpouring of giving, an outpouring of sharing. Then you find that the bread that you have cast on the water is the bread that comes back to you. And that's why a lot of people get their fingers burnt. They're trying to take the bread that the other fellow cast on the water. You don't get away with it for long. Because the only bread that's intended for us is the bread that we cast on the water. That's the bread that is supposed to come back to us with butter and sugar and honey on it. Now, until we can accept the truth that I and my Father are one. Thou seest me, thou seest the Father that sent me. For I and the Father are one. I am in the Father, and the Father is in me. Therefore, I am infinite. Therefore, I can heal the multitudes. I can feed the multitudes. I can forgive the multitudes. And until you can accept that and act on it as an activity of your consciousness, you're wasting your time in truth. Just wasting it. Imbibing a lot of poetry or pretty words maybe, but getting nowhere, because truth must be kept active in consciousness. We must pray without ceasing. Morning, noon, and night we must acknowledge that it is my oneness with God that constitutes the infinite nature of my being. It is my oneness with God that constitutes my oneness with you. It is my oneness with God that constitutes my oneness with publishers and booksellers and whatnot. It is my conscious oneness with God that brings my supply into my experience. But if I am not consciously aware, if I'm not knowing the truth of my oneness with God, nothing's happening. Nothing. It's like this room. There is neither good nor evil in this room. And if we all sit here thinking nothing, there's still neither good nor evil in this room. It is only when we begin to consciously think, consciously pour out love, consciously pour out forgiveness, consciously, then something's happening in this room. The room becomes vibrant with divine love. It becomes filled with the Holy Ghost and the Spirit. But who put it there? the activity of truth in your consciousness and mind. Then, do you know that if we were to meet in this room a half a dozen times, that the very walls of this room would be just as healing as Jesus' garment? That is why in the Orient, and we follow this custom in Hawaii, no one would ever think of moving into a home or a flat without calling in a man of religion to pray in each room. No one would ever think of doing that. If it is an ordinary home where they do not know metaphysical truth or spiritual truth, they'll call in one of the Hawaiian ministers. If a public building is dedicated, you will never see it dedicated without the Hawaiian minister there to give his prayer. Among those of us who are engaged in spiritual activity of our own nature, the same thing is true. Let any one of our students have a new home or a new apartment, a new flat, and you'll hear the call, come on, and then we'll have a little gathering there, and a dozen of us will meet and meditate, and if necessary, we'll go in every room in the house and meditate, and out in the garden, in order to fill the place with divine love, with that Spirit of God, to loose it, because it's locked up in you. It's not in the room, it's locked up in you. But when you consciously open out a way for the imprisoned splendor to escape, you have the Christ in this room. And then let somebody try to come in this room and do wrong, and watch the Christ take care of it for you. You don't have to do anything, just be a beholder. Loose the Christ in this room and then let someone try to touch it. Or you. And you soon find out that the Christ takes care of its own. But Christ can't be a word. Christ must be a released presence from within you. Christ is locked up in your breast. The Son of God is incarnate in you. That's God's gift to you from the beginning. Before Abraham was, I am with you. Therefore, in the beginning, before time was, the Christ was incarnate in you. Now, keep it locked up there and it'll do nothing for you. Or try to get a Christ to come to you and it will do nothing for you. But loose this hidden splendor, loose this imprisoned Christ, take Christ out of the tomb in which you've got him buried, and let him loose in this room. But by means of praying, by means of forgiving, by means of not judging, by means of not condemning, by means of blessing. I have witnessed people take this practice that we use at home and change their life. We take a passage of the Master's, my peace give I unto you, not as the world giveth, but my peace, the Christ peace. And I have witnessed students take that into their consciousness and then start out in the morning, whether in their bus trip or their auto trip or to their office or to the market shopping or whatever the nature of their work may be throughout the day, and wherever they go carry this message silently, secretly, my peace give I unto you, the Christ peace. And watch within a few days or weeks how the people change toward them. Can't help it. You can't help it. You're releasing the Christ, and they can't help feeling it. They can't help feeling it. They can't help feeling it any more than you can help feeling whether or not I love you. And you know right well that I can tell in a second whether you are loving me, whether you're receptive, whether you're responsive. I can tell that in 2 minutes. And so it is that as we go out into the world, if only we carry that one message with us, My peace give I unto thee, the Christ peace, the spiritual peace. And whisper it. You must remember this about prayer. Jesus was very careful about this, that you must never pray to be seen of men. Don't pray aloud. Let your praying be done in the inner sanctuary of your being so that man can't hear it. And then the God that seeth in secret rewardeth openly. And so if you make a practice of, no matter where you go, even when you're reading your newspaper and reading some bad news in it, even then declare, my peace give I unto thee. God's grace give I unto thee. The peace that passeth understanding give I unto thee. And as you learn to let that flow out from the eye of your being, you'll find that everyone who comes in contact will know that you're blessing them. They don't know how. The world doesn't understand how. They merely think you have a good disposition. Or they just think that you're a nice person. They don't know what it is, but they feel something. And you'd be surprised at the fact that between 80 and 90% of all people that you'll come in contact with are receptive to it. There are 10 or 20% so adamant in their humanness that you could love them to death and they wouldn't even know it. But between 80 to 90% of all the people in the world are receptive and responsive to spiritual truth. And if you are living in the atmosphere of my peace give I unto thee, God's grace be with thee, you'll soon find that they're receptive and responsive, and then pretty soon they're asking for help, and they don't even know why. But just see what you've done. You kept truth active in your consciousness. You have spent divine love. You have given divine love. You have cast your bread upon the waters. And that's what's coming back to you. But you see, if you are looking for good to come to you, if you are looking to demonstrate good, you're outside the infinite way, because you're outside of the acknowledgement of the already infinite nature of your being. But once you acknowledge that because of my oneness with God, I am already infinite, now I can begin to pour out. And it doesn't make any difference if I start pouring out the 2 drops of oil that I may have at the moment. Be assured of this, that the act of pouring is the multiplying. The act of giving is the multiplying. The act of sharing is the multiplying. That's the Christ that does the multiplying. And it does it within us, and then it begins to appear outwardly as form. Now, if the kingdom of God, or let us call this hidden manna, the Christ, if it is hidden within you, do you not see that you cannot begin to pour it merely by making statements of truth? You can only begin to pour it when you have become a listening agent, and then let it come up, and then you let it flow out. If you try to make up the words out of your head or take them out of your memory, you're living only in the intellectual plane of imagination. It is only because you have developed the meditative attitude of listening that these words pour into you and then out through you, silently, of course, secretly, sacredly, but because they pour in, they pour out. Then you find that the kingdom of God is really expressing itself in you and through you and out from you and then back unto you. Now, starting with January, I know that you're going to have an arrangement here in Cape Town where you will have at least once a month for the study of the monthly letter, so as to take these particular principles that I've been mentioning today and others that will keep coming each month and put them into practice as an activity of your own consciousness. In addition to that, I have several tapes on the 10-second and the 10-minute meditations to show us, teach us how to begin this process so that we develop the listening ear and the ability to receive impartations. And then beginning with the January letter, we are including a 1 page of a lesson. Many of you who may be familiar with Christian Science will see perhaps a similarity to that old Christian Science lesson, only it will differ in this wise. It will be a Bible passage with its spiritual interpretation as given in the Infinite Way literature, so that you'll have the benefit of the Bible passage and what the Infinite Way teaches. We are very fortunate that we have a teacher in Los Angeles who is not only a tremendous Bible scholar, but she has been studying this subject for so many years that she knows every spiritual interpretation in the Infinite Way literature. And she's a tremendously developed soul, a wonderful practitioner, and she is preparing this lesson every month. She's using it herself in her own work in Los Angeles, and it's been so successful that she's given us permission to use one of these lessons every month. And you will have a few Bible passages and then a few statements from the Infinite Way writings, and be able to see how they correlate, how they interpret each other, and then you'll have to work with them to learn how, again, to apply them. Because you will notice that all I have done today, outside of the explanation of the beginning of our work, all I've done today is show you the practical application of a few principles. Now just think, when you have the practical application of a dozen principles, how your entire nature will be changed, because this up here will always be working. It won't be still. It won't be still for a moment. The only time it'll be still is when you're in that receptivity. I can tell you right now that all through the night, this thing was going on through my mind that was going to happen here today. It wouldn't stop going through my mind all night. It wouldn't let me sleep. And it happens sometimes that way. Other times, I feel that God has a grudge against me, and he doesn't let me know anything till I get up here on the platform, and then it pops out. And I get kind of mad at him, because you get anxious, for fear that you'll get up here and look foolish. Nothing's going to come out. It hasn't happened yet, but you never can tell. There'll be a first time. But this time he was kind to me. He kept me awake all night with this program. Well, I suppose I can say the rest you'll have to find out from the writings and the recordings. I'll be a salesman then and tell you to buy the writings and the recordings so that you'll know about all the rest. But really, it isn't half as important to know that as it is to know a dozen good principles and work with it. That's far more important than all the books and all the tapes and all the teachings that ever were invented. Because it's the activity of truth in our consciousness that does the work. It's the divine love that flows out from us, that comes back to us to meet our need. It's the truth we express that does the healing work. And never forget this, that there has no right, really, to be sin, disease, or death among us to any great extent. We should be able ourselves, with what we know, to keep this so under control that every single one of us is 80 or 90% free of the discords of this world. We won't be 100% free because each one of us has some humanness left in us. I think you'll find in the Infinite Way Wisdoms, where the question was asked, why is it that spiritual or metaphysical teachers and practitioners of long standing sometimes have serious problems? And the answer I gave is because every one of us has some of humanhood left in us. And as long as there's humanhood left in us, it's going to express itself, and you can't stop it. And so it is that as long as you find us somewhere or somehow under the spell of the illusions of the senses, please believe we haven't yet attained full Christhood. Of course, let's not blame ourselves, because Brother Paul had the same trouble too. He had to finally say that I do not claim to have fully attained, but forgetting the things which are past, at least I'm trying to go forward and attain. And so we all have to make that statement too. We've said a lot of absolute truth today, but none of us have attained fully all of the truth that we know. Well, until we meet again, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining and listening to Joel and this beautiful talk. So that was always like more inspiration to continue, of course, because he's pointing out about, yes, you have to apply this, you have to come into this, you have to invite this in all the time. Now, in our new 40 days that we just started, like yesterday, there's a provision for meeting. For instance, the 7 a.m. Pacific time meditation every day except for Wednesday. Every day we come together for 20 minutes of silence, then some music, and it is inspired by an idea of Joel tabernacling with angels, children of God. This is in fact the invitation to immediately when your day starts, at least when you wake up in the Pacific coast, you wake up and you are able to do this meditation for just 20 minutes or half an hour at 7 a.m. So you have a possibility to feel this and to let this idea dawn back into your consciousness when you wake up to yes, like I'm dedicating this day again to truth. This is the only thing I want. I might be distracted during the day for some time, but I will come back to this, and I commit myself for 40 days to stay right there, to come back to that right there. And of course, you can do that practice by yourself too. You don't necessarily have to do it as a group or as an organized setup. But this is for you who might think, oh, that can be very helpful for me because I want to do that. So you're wholeheartedly invited to do that. There are other meetings too. So on Wednesdays and Saturdays we have an Center of Love meditation inspired by this, where Joel starts with. This is repeating itself twice a week for half an hour meditation, and then a bit of contemplation, and who knows what else follows. It's like it's not a completely set program, as you know. It's always with fresh manna, as I call it. It's like every day there's an inspiration to share and to bring this to life in you, and these are the words that are given, just like today. So anyway, so thank you so much for joining in this tape group, Wild Work. Thank you so much for your attention and your active participation. And yeah, don't forget to send in healing requests. That's always helpful for yourself, for everyone, in fact, because this is like, here we stand. We have parts that are human. Now these parts can really rub you in some wrong direction for a moment, that you feel pain and or who knows what it is that you feel. Now you want to not be concerned with that, and that's why you can give it away. So this is the healing request, and send it to me or send it to whoever, but do it with the intention to let it be released for you. So that's another part. All right, I hope to see you next week in a tape group World Work, where we go to chapter 8 of the book. You will receive an email with a tape. I really like this format. I think it's working really well because tapes are lovely to use, and there's always a relationship to what Joel says in the book. So that's easy peasy. All right, thank you so much, and I hope to see you soon. Thank you for now. Thank you.